So what I normally do, Rich, is I take people and I have them do what I call a window walk. I'll have them take the dot, put it in the lower left-hand corner of the aperture of the structure of the sight, but I'll have them put the dot on the center mass, and I'll have them shoot around. Then I'll have them put it in the upper left-hand corner, but I'll have them put the dot on the target center mass. And I have them walk the window all the way around, maintaining focus on the target and just being aware of the dot. Dude, even people who have shot the red dot sight for years, it's like they have an epiphany. They're like, holy shit. Because they've been using it improperly. They've been using it incorrectly. It's the next best thing to cheating, as everyone in the world now knows. You know, I knew it a long time ago, but I guess everyone else knows it now.
Kelly, how's it going, brother? Long time no see.
Hey, man, it's good to see you, Rich.
Yeah, I know you're really swamped right now with a lot of stuff we're going to get to here in our conversation, but I really appreciate you spending time with us today. I say this to everybody all the time. You are probably the biggest influence on me and a whole generation of combative students. And I think that our viewers and listeners are really going to enjoy this episode. So again, thanks again, brother. What I'd like to start with is a lot of people, a lot of private citizens know you from your Paladin Press series, several Paladin Press videos and DVDs, actually. And that's how I first came to learn about you. And at that time, for reasons that you can discuss, you were using the alias Jim Grover. And those were some badass videos, man. I had them actually on VHS first. The Combative series is the first thing I saw. And as a lifelong martial artist, it's not an over-exaggeration to say that those videos changed my life, changed my complete outlook on everything I had been training in for, 15 years prior to that. So, but what I want to start with, Kelly, before we get there, is I want to start with your background. Like growing up, what were your influences as far as martial arts and combatives?
Sure. I guess I started, my dad would teach us, things that he had learned in the military. He had been a hand-to-hand combat instructor post-World War II in what was the Air Corps. Before that, my grandfather was a hand-to-hand combat instructor in World War I. It was basically boxing and wrestling, so grew up kind of hard knocks like that, great family, and then got into boxing as a young kid. Spent some time doing that. It just kind of went down the normal martial journey that we all go on. Looked at everything, toyed with Filipino martial arts, toyed with JKD, toyed with some traditional martial arts, although I was never really drawn to that because I didn't feel like I needed the discipline or anything like that they normally use to instill kids with. I was a disciplined kid. So I just kind of found my way, and then started looking at other people. Of course, World War II came up, the World War II purists. And I looked at that for a while. But I could never be lumped into like the standard World War II purist kind of approach, as you know. There were some things in those curriculums that were really good by Applegate and Fairbairn and O'Neill and all of those guys. But some of it, let's not kid each other, was just horrible. It was just really bad. It didn't have anything to do with dynamic fighting. It had to do with like one and done, like an attacker does something to you, you do one thing to them, and then it's over. And we know that fights aren't like that. The biggest thing I think that I focused on was the reality of fights, that they don't end until you compel the attacker to end it, to stop it. And that usually means he's unconscious, right? Because that's the highly predictable model, right? If you don't know who you're fighting, you don't know what style they have or what capability they have. If you make them unconscious, they're highly predictable. They just lay there. So kind of a rambling way to get around, how I came up with what I do, and it's evolved. Kelly, we're not doing today the things we were doing 30 years ago or 25 years ago. That's
exactly what I want to get into, brother. Hey, but what you said is, I see an analogy there between like the World War II purists are very similar to the practitioners of the traditional Asian martial arts, in that
absolutely
they're bound by that tradition, yep. and they want to, like you said, it's an ABC formulaic approach. And one of the first things I learned from you is there's no formulaic approach.
No.
Fights are chaotic, and you have to be prepared for wherever that fight may take you. You have to be prepared. Another thing that you're a big advocate of, brother, is that the bad guy gets a say, right? So you can have in your mind, I'm going to do this and this and this. If he does this, I'm going to do it. It's just that doesn't happen fast enough in a real fight.
The longest pole in the tent when we do training is sure, techniques matter. We're principle based, right? So we focus on principles because principles are never wrong. Techniques can fail. Principles don't fail. That's why they're principles, right? So if you adhere to those principles, both horizontally off your back or standing up, you'll never be far wrong. But at the end of the day, you've always got to be prepared for things not to go the way that they do in the gym, because they never do, ever. So I think that there's a lot of charlatans out there that want people to believe that, number one, they're never going to get hit. We know that's bullshit, right? I mean, if you're in a violent confrontation, you're going to be hit, right? That's number one. You shouldn't be surprised by that. I'm still always amazed when we're doing training where people get dinged and, they're startled by it. They take a step back and they're startled, or their partner will go, I'm sorry. Well, I mean, what are you sorry for? You did exactly what you were supposed to. You hit the guy. The guy that you hit didn't do what he was supposed to do and avoid being hit or block it or counter or any number of the things you could do. So the long pole in the tent, Rich, is getting people across the threshold of actually fighting in training. That's the biggest thing, is to make people, and you can do it in small format, 30-second vignettes, 45-second vignettes. They're highly adrenalized, right? Proper safety equipment and all that stuff. But they can't even have a knowledgeable opinion about what they should or should not do if they don't know what a fight is. And a fight is certainly not doing one thing, stopping in midair, and then letting your training partner do whatever he wants to do while you're frozen in time like a mannequin. That's ridiculous, right? We stopped using meat puppets, I don't know, 25 years ago, right? I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, Kelly. I think that there are times when you can set someone up, and this to be true because you taught me this, and you can respond preemptively. Like,
yes,
as this dude comes in, boom, like if you stage yourself in a certain way, you're set up for certain techniques. But short of that, that is when you see an attacker coming, you are prepared, and you're going to basically light him up when he shows that he poses a threat. Contrast that with, you're walking out of the grocery store, you got something in one hand, and you're worried about when you get home, you got to deal with your wife on a certain issue, whatever that case is. Now you're attacked. Now you got something in your hand. You're surprised. It's not you with the capability of going preemptive. So that's when I think that some of the more purist combatives programs can fail. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, if you ask the average, combatives practitioner, does he do any ground? They'll recite a lot of bullshit like, oh, you should never go to the ground, right? Well, yeah, we know that you shouldn't go to the ground, right? Because of curbs and multiple attackers, and it's a hard surface, et cetera, et cetera. But what if you wake up on the ground and the guy's in side control, or he's mounting you? I mean, saying that is such a pretentious statement by people who admittedly don't grapple. A lot of combatives guys don't grapple. They don't do any of it. Yet they'll say they do counter grappling. Counter grappling is grappling. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So you can't be taught how to grapple by someone who doesn't know how to do it. So there's a lot of bullshit out there. Isn't it presumptuous for a person who's never grappled to think that he's even going to be able to keep a high school wrestler from taking him down? Of course it is, and there's a lot of tangential learning that's occurred, right? Like there are people who watch UFC, they watch One Championship, they watch Muay Thai, they watch boxing, and there's some tangential learning that happens through that, right? Like if a guy's been watching UFC for 3 years, he's some thug, they like watching fights. He kind of has a half-ass idea how to apply a rear naked choke. He kind of has a half-ass idea about what to do when he's in top position and what to do when he's in bottom position. So again, morphing from like the late 80s, early 90s kind of combatives into more like an MMA model, because, as Dana White has said, it is about as close you get to a real fight. All tools are in play. And I think that that's the smartest modality now, is an MMA modality.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about one of the underlying principles of everything that you do, whether it's with a pistol or with empty hands or with an edge weapon or a stick. And that is the idea that your system may not be the right word what you teach is based on gross motor skills. Can you talk about the importance of that? And everybody sort of realizes nowadays that everybody that knows anything about combatives, they know that that's the goal, that that's advantageous. But I think a lot of people don't know that you were one of the sort of pioneers with that approach. You're certainly the first person that I saw that opened my eyes from the traditional martial arts block and counter type mentality to no, you need to have a gross motor based system that doesn't require you to have ninja like reflexes or be, uber fit. Now, of course, the more fit you are, the better you'll be able to fight. There's no hiding that. But you shouldn't rely completely on athleticism, because your ability to do things, especially more fine motor skills or complex motor skills, is going to degrade. Can you talk about that and why you think that that's so important when it comes to combatives?
Sure. And this is kind of a long answer, right? But the thing that initially got me thinking about that was the term muscle memory, right? If I'm talking to a trainer these days and they say muscle memory, I just switch OFF, right? I mean, because that it's a canard. There's no such thing as muscle memory. Now let's pick that scab a little bit. What that means is when people normally use that, they mean that without cognition, facing an unknown stimulus out of an infinite number of stimuluses, that you're going to search and find the right answer to that in the moment under duress. That's ridiculous. It doesn't happen. Muscles are fibrous. They don't have a memory. The idea that you're going to get as many repetitions that you need to do something without cognition is ridiculous. That's just it's a canard. It doesn't exist. When I put together the combative stuff and the firearms training and all that, I talked to a lot of ergonomic engineers. I talked to a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, everything. And the ergonomic engineers were most interesting, because I asked them, well, at what point can a factory line worker, right, do his tasks without even being knowledgeable about it, without even being cognitively aware that he's doing it? And all of them said millions and millions of repetitions. It'd be similar to you unzipping your fly to take a leak. I mean, like, you've done that since you were a little kid. You don't even think about it, right?
More lately that I'm getting older, Kelly. A lot more lately.
Yeah. Well, you got to keep wearing those Depends, Rich, because they'll help you with that. But at the end of the day, I mean, that just doesn't happen. There has to be cognition. Okay. So if you take away the ability to have cognition, you turn a corner and get punched in the face. And you're relying on fine motor manipulation or fine motor skills, they just won't be there, right? So now let's go to the second part of the answer, or to your question. Self-defense 101. You were a career cop, right? What does an assault consist of? Well, let's say that it's illegally arresting my movement. Okay, so I'm walking down the street, guy gets in my face, illegally arrests my movement. He takes away my option to leave or anything like that, backs me up against the wall or whatever. That's an assault. And then he grabs me. That's a battery, assault and battery, right? So self-defense 101 in a traditional martial arts system might sound like center the thumb on the back of the hand, wrap four fingers, support the elbow, rotate, and now you have an arm bar. And okay, that works with no one resisting or having bad intent or anything like that. But when you try that in the real world, in real life, you look like a fool, because all you're doing is trying to get control of this while the guy is just hammering you with this other hand, right? So that's just not realistic. So again, self-defense 101, what I believe is, you grab me, I punch your face. How about that? You don't have a right to grab me. No one has the right to grab me. So at the end of the day, you've already crossed two hurdles. You didn't allow me to leave under my own free will, and you grabbed me. I don't need anything more than that, right? And people will say, like, well, it can't be that simple. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the ability to instantly respond through gross motor movement, okay? And the right term, not muscle memory, is motor memory. And what that comes from is you performing a task and getting the desired outcome. Your brain stores that. When I do it this way, I get the desired outcome. That is a legitimate term, okay, used by professionals in the kinesiology business and all that stuff. So at the end of the day, if you say muscle memory and you think that you're going to do something to the point where you have no cognition and you correctly solve the problem, you're already running afoul of what we know to be true in training.
Good luck. Yeah, good luck with that. Kelly, there's so much. Your background is it almost reads like, a protagonist in an espionage novel or something. I know there's things that you don't want to talk about, but if you had to summarize your military service, what types of things did you do in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, in the Marine Corps, I was an infantry commander, platoon commander. After that, I went to the battalion staff for a while. I was on that. Then I had a tour on recruiting duty. Every officer has to do a B billet, where you go out and do either reserve duty, where you do recruiting duty, or the drill field. Came back from that and went to amphibious warfare school. I was a captain at that point. From there, I went to 9th Marines in Okinawa. From 9th Marines, I went as the S3 Alpha, the operations officer. And then I went to start 3MEF SOTG, which is Special Operations Training Group. And I was a special missions officer, so I stood up that section that had to do with tactical recovery of aircraft and personnel, direct action missions, hostage recovery, all of that, counter narcotics, all of that. In the hiatus between there and Solic in Quantico, I went to the English. I went over there to be with the 22nd SAS, the SBS, and the Met Cops. At the time, I think it was DT-17. I think it was what it was. Plus SO-13, SO-14 for surveillance and all that stuff. It was a great trip over there. Got to Solic, trained all the CQB units in the Marine Corps. For direct action tactics, techniques, and procedures, wrote the manual, the initial manual for that. And then was pulled from there to go to a Tier 1 force, the most classified unit there is in the military. And there I was in charge of running all their high-risk environment training for years and years. Got out of that, then started my company, Personal Defensive Measures, ran that for, 4 years, 5 years, something like that, which morphed into Crucible, and Crucible became a multi-million-dollar contractor that serviced only the lettered agencies, the Department of State, and tiered military units. If you were a civilian, you couldn't go to Crucible. But ran that business up to be probably around 18 million a year, something like that. It was nothing to come out to Crucible and have 300-400 people walking around. You've been there, you've seen it. You know what it was. So that's a little bit how I ended up here.
That's a crazy Crucible was a crazy facility, and then through the Paladin Press videos, and also through your writings as Jim Grover for titles like Black Belt Magazine, which that's actually later, but Guns and Ammo and Handguns, right? You wrote for those titles, I believe, quite a bit. You were a columnist and most recently a columnist for Black Belt Magazine. So through your writings and through your videos, particularly the Paladin Press videos, that was sort of how the private citizen sector came to know what you were doing, right?
Yeah, when I was doing all the stuff under Jim Grover, I was still active duty. I was with the unit, so I just chose a pen name. It was my father's first name, my mother's maiden name. So that's how I came up with that. But it was a good run. I met some great people, Tom Ciatos, Kevin Steele, you know a lot of the guys, some of the old hands, Wiley Clapp, and Dave Arnold, of course, South African Dave Arnold. All those guys, I walked around with them, and that was a good thing to be involved with those guys. They brought so much to the table,
And these days, and I know this is something we can't talk about much, but you were sort of back focused on providing training for a government contract, right? That's taking up a lot of your time these days.
It is. Probably about a year ago, we ran a pilot course for the government, and they wanted me to put together a course to handle a specific requirement, and we did that, and they loved it. And so we've been doing that pretty much monthly. Every single month, we run a couple of courses. But that's been kind of like a swan song. You know what I mean? I'm getting old in the tooth, long in the tooth. I'm 66, turned 67 in December. And I don't know how much longer I'll be doing this, but I'm still able to move. I'm still able to, produce power and do what I do. And we're in a good fight. So yeah, we've been pretty busy with that. Plus we still have some of the usual suspects. Just got back from Sweden, training some of their tiered forces. We work for some of the big corporations in the United States doing travel safe and streetwise and preparing expatriates to go overseas safely, et cetera. So still busy. I mean, I'd like to say I'm semi-retired, but I'm kind of not. I'm kind of still fucking working.
You always got a lot of irons in the fire, brother. What I was going to ask you, we kind of skipped over, but you were a security consultant that was on air for different networks back in the day, right? Post 9/11.
Yeah, I did a lot of time on Fox. Then CNN picked me up full time. Even though I was running the Crucible, they picked me up full time for 2 years. So I was a full time CNN analyst for them. And then did all the networks, but I got over 2,000 hits on air. And a lot of time in front of the camera.
Yeah. Well, so before the days of social media, I followed you, but I followed you by buying your videos and reading your stuff and all that. And I wrote an article for Black Belt magazine years and years ago, and I had always read Black Belt magazine since I was a kid. I always dreamed of having an article in there, so I actually got an article in there. And so I went down to Southern California to Black Belt Studios, and their photographer was there and stuff. And I had somehow mentioned something about Kelly McCann or brought you up or something. And the guy's like, "Oh my God, those guys are crazy." I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "They were just here for a photo shoot." He goes, "We've had every top level martial artist in the world for the last 30 years here to do a photo shoot. And this is the first time that we've ever had blood drawn." But he goes, "They left. They're both bleeding. They're both sweaty." And he said, "I kept telling them, wait, it's still photography. In other words, you could pose." And you're like, "Nope, we're going to do it for real." And of course, you guys, within reason, you weren't trying to kill each other, but having that element of reality in everything you do is important. Another thing too, Kelly, that I've trained with you quite a bit in your combatives instructor course. You were really hammering home the point that in some traditional martial arts, someone gets to a level, he's a master, and he no longer has to do anything, right? You can't quit. He's beyond reproach. With combatives, you taught us that's not the case. We're all in it together. Nobody is the absolute guru.
Nope.
And you should still be able to prove your assumptions with someone who's resistive. You can't just sit there and say, "Well, don't ask you. How dare you ask me? Have you seen this belt with all these stripes on it?" So I think that's a huge thing about what we do. And no one that's ever trained with you feels like you can't do what you say you're going to do. So I think that's critical. Yeah, exactly. There's that too. But another thing too, to piggyback on that is you're big on will fight. Like, it's a compliment that you would pay someone that you hold in high regard if you say that dude will fight. Because there's a lot of people that can fight, but maybe they won't for whatever reason. Can you talk about why that will fight concept is so important to you and so important that you impart that to your students?
Sure. So if you go back to the first part of the interview, right, we talked about the long pole in the tent is to get people to actually fight, right? I've trained a lot of people in the, 50 years, 45 years I've been doing this, and I've trained some guys that were really good on bags, really good on pads. They moved well and everything like that, but I knew they'd lose in a fight because they wouldn't fight, for whatever reason, afraid of the consequences, afraid of injury, whatever. But on the back of the instructor certification shirt you got, it says will fight because you were made to fight in front of your peers. Now, that's important when you go through a certification program, all right? It's important in an operational unit. In fact, the training that we're doing now for the government also makes them fight in front of each other. And that's important because if I'm going to deploy somewhere, I want to know that if we get into something, you're going to be right there with me, that you've been tested as much as you can be tested. The same thing is true with people who wear a shirt like this that says "We'll fight" on the back. That is the most important thing. Not can, not I understand the technique, not can do it in a dojo or in a training environment or something like that, but actually in a dynamic circumstance, under duress, you'll throw your fucking hands. That's what matters.
Yeah, and that has to do with being vulnerable, but not focusing on what might happen to you, but rather, this is a dangerous situation. I'm going to end this quickly and effectively right now. And you're not considering, well, what if he delivers a hook as I'm moving in, or what if he knees me in the groin? You're considering what you are going to do to the assailant who is standing between you and safety. I mean, is that fair to say?
And you're going to take bumps as you do it. Right.
Yep.
Just like in sparring. I mean, if you scrap with guys as a cop, do you ever not get hit? Of course you get hit.
Your knee gets banged up, or
but you go right through it and you stay on task and you brush that stuff off and just keep in the fight. That's why it is important to actually fight. And the biggest load of bullshit that is sold today in self-defense is that if you learn this way or this system or this whatever, that A, you're not going to get hit, B, you're always going to win, C, it's never going to go to the ground. That's just not a fight. That's not real. We spend a tremendous amount of time, this, when we're doing like stand-up grappling and stuff like that, or doing dirty boxing drills or whatever, where either participant can reach down for a single leg. And that's to always make sure that holistically you understand you could be winning a fight with your fists, and the guy that you're beating decides, I can't take this. He's going to knock me out. So I'm going to tackle him. I'm going to take him to the ground. If you're not thinking like that, and by the way, thinking about weapons, the possibility of weapons, you're just not in the modern game of combatives, right? If you're still doing one person with a meat puppet, the meat puppet does something, stops in midair, then you get to do whatever you're going to do. You need to read a book or go to our YouTube page or something, man.
Kelly, some people that followed you from the time your videos just first came out with Paladin Press, and you had an entire line. You had books on shooting a carbine. You had books on close quarter pistol stuff, which is the basis of everything that I've been doing for years, and a lot of the combative stuff too. But when you sort of, I don't know if morphed is the right word, but when you started bringing in more of the combative sports aspects, I think it confused some people who were maybe more of the traditional combatives practitioners. And that's what people say. Well, what do you study? What systems? I'm like, well, combatives. But when you say combatives these days, that could be referring to Krav Maga. That could be referring to something that someone learned in the Army. There's no clearly defined definition, which I think is kind of a good thing.
I think,
but I tell them what you teach is like loosely based on World War II combatives, but then you add in boxing, you add in Muay Thai, you MMA. Add in BJJ.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about that. Was that, and here's the thing. I know you had always boxed, so the combative sports were not new to you. It's not like you said, well, I'm going to suddenly see value in the combative sports. No. You had always done that, but I think it might have to do with how much time someone has to devote. Like the average person isn't going to train like an MMA fighter. So maybe you can talk about that. It's not an evolution really, but your public persona of embracing the combative sports. And maybe, I'm sure you probably got some pushback. Like people are like, hey, this is not a street fight.
Dude, I took a lot of heat, a lot of people that never knew that I was a combat sports guy for years. And I mean, decades, were like, he's betraying World War II combat. Okay. Well, number one, I was never a full scale World War II guy ever. Anyone that knows me knows that. John Kerry used to be that guy. He was like hardcore World War II. If it didn't appear in like an old World War II publication, it wasn't real, blah, blah, blah. Not taking anything away from John. He did some remarkable things in his life. He had no eyeballs and still was able to get a black belt in Japanese jiu-jitsu. It's crazy, right?
Crazy.
And the guy had incredible energy, right? But there are limitations when you don't have eyeballs in your head, and at the end of the day, when I moved and brought in combat sports into the training, a lot of people who had hung their hat on the idea of combatives as it was at the time, and we're talking mid 80s, late 80s, something like that, they thought, well, I've arrived. I understand the curriculum. I know what's going to go on, et cetera. And everyone would always ask me. Tom Flint, a mutual friend of ours, asked me this. He's an instructor under Lee Morris. He's an instructor under me. And he thought that he had arrived. He said, okay, well, now I've got a couple of certifications under some pretty well-known guys. What do I do next? And I said, fight. You do combat sports, man. And he was like, what? And I was like, dude, that's the closest you're going to get to an actual fight with people with bad intent safely, right? I mean, it's true. And to his credit, that's exactly what he did. In fact, a lot of people that have trained with me understood what I was saying and have done that. All the people out there that talk shit on combat sports, I make it real simple for them, Rich. I just tell them, well, look, I'm sure you have a fight promotion in your area, right? Go to a gym, get a camp going, 30-day camp, 60-day camp, whatever you think you need. If you're not a fat bastard, then you don't have to have that much time. But if you are, take a little bit more time and actually go and fight. Actually set a fight up with a guy in your weight class and go do it. How many of those people do you think actually do that?
None. Yeah,
right.
Those guys don't do that.
Because that's a little bit too close to real, isn't it? When you get in the ring or the cage, that's a little too close to real. You may end up humiliated. You may end up knocked out.
Their opponent may invalidate everything that they believe to be true.
100%.
And that's scary because you've invested years and thousands of dollars and you think that you've arrived. That's why you have to keep an open mind. Otherwise, why even learn anything if you're not going to give it a try? If you're still going to just, I see this a lot of times at shooting courses, Kelly, and as many courses you've taught, I know you get once in a while a guy in there who he takes your course, but it's almost like he just wants to take the course to take a photo afterward with you or whatever, and sit. But he's not receptive to the training.
Right.
So that's a huge issue that you got to keep an open mind. And I think you've told me before, like, be aware of someone who is teaching the same stuff right now that they were teaching a decade and a half ago.
That's right.
Because that's someone who thinks they have all the answers.
Yeah, they don't evolve. Combatives has evolved. The Combatives Association, you and I have talked about them a lot. John Valentine, Matt Larson, Craig Douglas, Fletch Fuller, a bunch of people that we both know and appreciate. Cecil Birch,
Yep.
Me, I'm involved with them. They have a good approach. It's a good approach. And when Craig first approached me with it, and John, I was like, okay, well, I mean, I don't know anything about you. What are you doing? And they explained, that MMA is the modality, and all of that. And yes, that's correct. Their approach, I think, it has validity to it. If people haven't gone to the summit, they do it once a year. Highly suggest they do that just to get an approach. And I've got differing opinions with some of them as they have differing opinions with each other, and it's a healthy debate that we have behind the scenes. A lot on a lot of things. But at the end of the day, if you're doing the same thing you were doing 10 years ago, you quit. Right? You've quit. And you honestly do believe that you have it all figured out and that you can't be better. It's constantly evolving. An Olympic athlete never arrives. They never have a hands-on hip moment. They never say, okay, I'm here. Even after they've climbed the podium and put on a gold medal, they're looking for the next one. And they know that the athlete that's going to get that next medal isn't the same athlete that got this medal. They have to get better. They have to evolve. So people who are stuck in yesteryear, I don't really have much to say to them. I mean,
yeah,
how do you correct that if they're closed-minded?
Yeah, 100%. Kelly, you've stressed to me the importance of being irreverent, and that doesn't necessarily mean being disrespectful, although it may be taken as disrespectful. But talk about that, how that's important for a combatives practitioner.
I mean, so like, look, you go to a combatives course, you go to a shooting course, you go to a knife course, a stick course, whatever. It's about serious shit, right? I mean, we're talking about maybe getting shot, maybe having to shoot somebody else, or maybe getting stabbed or having to stab somebody else, or maybe getting hit in the mouth or having hit someone else in the mouth. Everyone gets that. But melodrama doesn't help anybody, right? So someone peacocking in front of the class, lowering their eyebrows, going, if you get in a knife fight, you will be cut. It's like,
yeah.
No shit, Captain Obvious. I mean, so Irreverence is just kind of a way to keep a little bit of humor in the situation, and not take yourself so damn serious. I mean,
Yeah.
and honestly, that kind of goes to a few other things, Rich. You and I had this conversation about shooting, right? The metric of timer to first shot, right? That's the metric. That's the big metric that everybody chases. Where are you shooting 2 rounds and at 7 yards from a startle cue? Well, number one, cover your gun. Okay. I don't want to see that open holster shit. You're not walking around like that. The fact that you do that, or the fact that you test yourself after shooting all day, is meaningless. Test yourself cold. But then, more importantly, ask yourself, when are you going to do that? Right? This is an evolving kind of idea. The idea of me drawing on a draw is kind of dumb, right? I kind of want to get behind cover on a draw if I can, and then draw my weapon and fire. Now, shooting for, 1-1s, 1-0s, sub 1 second, cool and everything, but don't skeletonize your holster. Don't download your ammo. Don't put a compensator on your gun. Don't have a race rig or anything like that. Cover your duty rig. Cover it. And let's see what you got with duty ammo and duty weapon, etc. That's an evolvement of thought, because everyone was always thinking, well, how fast are you? How fast and accurate are you? Well, not very if I'm dead, if I drew on a draw,
Yeah.
right? Now,
Yeah.
some people may go executive protection, right, or protective services. Do you know that in the history of protective services, an attack on the principal has never immediately been answered by a gun? Never. No one has ever drawn on the assassin and shot them. It's always been hands. So you tell me, man. I mean, yeah, I like doing it too. I love getting on the timer and racing the timer. You do too. Dave Spalding, our friend, he likes it too. We all like it. But should that be what all the training is about? I'm thinking that we're evolving, and the thought is evolving.
If your head's on a swivel and you're paying attention, there's probably a greater likelihood that you're going to be able to draw covertly. Yes. And seek a position to cover. Not always, and you have to train for the worst case scenario, but that's just something that people don't really consider is, you may draw more attention to yourself if you try to draw that quickly. 100%. Whereas if you're able to, that's something important. Another thing, Kelly, that you just a
point on that, Rich. The minute that you produce a gun, whether it was your gunfight or it wasn't, it's now your gunfight.
Yes.
Right? So like if you react to something and you draw and produce that pistol, if it was an incident between two other people and they see you with a gun in your hand, their assumption is you're involved in some way. So now you see what I'm saying? So yeah, there's just a lot of thinking that has to continue to be done on armed conflict and unarmed conflict.
And you've in that situation upped the ante to now dude calls your bluff. He may run off and it's a happy ending, but if he calls your bluff, and that's where you need to have, some pistol retention skills and some combative skills and all that. It all merges together. Without going on a tirade, when I first became a cop in the 90s, it was like the firearms guys were over here and the defensive tactics guys were over here, and they taught different stances, different methodologies and stuff. And it's like, one of the things that I like to think I had a small hand in at my agency was helping to integrate that stuff, to teach people that, yeah, dude, you may shoot someone and still have to fight them, or you may be mid-fight with someone and have to shoot them. So it's all one fight. You got to be able to kind of flow seamlessly. One last point I want to hit, Kelly, because you just brought this up. I have a column coming out in Handguns Magazine where I address the benefits. Actually, it's going to be in Guns and Ammo Magazine. Benefits of slow motion video. And that's the first time I ever did that, as I mentioned in the column, was taking one of your courses, and we filmed each other doing a draw. And what I think is pretty cool, as you mentioned, the timer tells a story. The timer doesn't lie. The timer is a metric that you can use to see if you're better than you were. So that's good. It doesn't tell everything. The target also tells part of the story, right? Because you either hit or you did not hit. But what I think is so cool about the slow-mo video is that the timer and the target tell the end of the story.
Yes.
Whereas the slow motion video shows the whole story. What up? What resulted in you missing the target, or you not missing, or you're not making your time standard. So that was critical. And I was wearing a duty rig at the time. It was a triple retention holster. Yep. And from that slow motion video, I realized that I had been taught to drive down on the gun so hard that I'm practically, forcing the bottom of the magazine to my knee.
Yep.
And it's like, that's where I don't want the gun. Where I want the gun is up.
Yes.
So from analyzing that video without going too far down the rabbit hole, I was able to virtually immediately make myself more efficient. But I didn't know I was doing that. So without that slow motion video, you can think you're doing great, but you're maybe not. It's almost like having the input from someone who's animated and wanting to fight you back. You may think you're really good, but when you get punched in the mouth, maybe that's an indication that you're not as good as you think. So yeah, well, that's a huge benefit.
You've been a firearms instructor long enough, decades, to know that the average range coach, what they do is they'll correct the target, right? So they'll look at the target, they'll make a call, oh, you need more thumb on the frame, or, oh, you're dumping the gun or whatever. And then after they tell the student what to correct, they'll give the assault cue or push the button or blow the whistle or whatever while they watch the target. So in other words, they'll tell the person what to do. They'll analyze the target, and they'll say like, oh, well, your rounds are at, 9:00. So you need more thumb. Okay. And then they'll have them do it again and look at the target. They're not looking at the holster, see the 3-finger grip, watch it come up to the temporal or the temporary pectoral index, see if it gets thrusted out, look for the whitening of skin on what's tightening. That's how you correct it. You can't correct it if you're just looking at the target. You have to correct, like you said correctly, the process. But still today, there are guys on the range that will tell a student something off. Remember those little Caswell correction cards, that bullshit?
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll have their little Caswell, and they'll tell people, oh, it looks to me like you're healing. You're healing the gun.
Yeah.
Shoot it again and don't heal. And then they'll look at the target. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Kelly, you were one of the first, if not the absolute first, I think the first commercially to have a red dot on your pistol. And this was way back in the day. Even now, there's some naysayers, not many, because most people realize the advantages that a red dot on a pistol could provide. But talk about the thought process in those early days. And you must have had people looking at you like you had, an extra hole in your head or something, right? When you had that thing. And back then, I want you to talk a little bit about this too. The technology and what you had available as far as mounting and stuff is probably not nearly as efficient as the things that we have today, as far as being able to mount that on there where it's not only very secure, but kind of a lower mount where if you want, you can have co-witnessing with the iron sights and all that stuff. But talk about what it was like when you first started messing with a red dot on your pistol.
Okay. So I was right for guns and ammo, and doing all kinds of things with handguns magazine. I was training the unit and all kinds of stuff. And the first thing that grabbed my attention was there's 2 sighting modalities going on from primary weapon, your M4, to your pistol, right? So I can keep both eyes open and keep my target in focus and just be aware of where the dot is on the target and use my rifle. But if I have to transition, then I'm going back to a 3-dot sight where I have to have, focal transition to the front sight. I can't look at the target. I've got to do this. And it just seemed like that was unnecessary, right? So, and not smart. So I was looking around, and the first sight that I saw that worked was a Dr. Optics sight. And it looks pretty much like the sights do today, pretty much the same design or anything. But this is back in the late 80s, right? Like 88, 89, something like that. Because I shot that Dr. Optics sight for years and years before it was ever inside the Crucible videos and everything. And I think that's where people go like, you weren't the first guy to do it. Fuck you. Yes, I was, dude. Where were you?
Yeah.
I mean, you were shooting
Where's your video?
With a Bianchi challenge with a huge sight on it. Come on,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
So anyway, as I started to work it, I had to make a mount for it. It was kludged up. I took a dovetail and I had a basically a plank welded onto it and tapped, and I put the sight on that. So it wasn't optimum, right? But it worked. It worked, and it worked consistently well. Okay, it didn't break. Nothing went wrong with it. It gave me an extra handle when I had to do weak hand stuff, right? It's a bigger surface to put over your belt and work things. So anyway, it kind of took off. Then another company approached me and asked me if I would help them. develop one for a pistol, because I was kind of pissing in their ear going, you guys are missing the boat on this, right? So I went to another company and just said, like, look, yeah, I'll help you with this. So then it started to become mainstream. And then everybody, of course, all the naysayers came out. It's got batteries. It's going to break. The windshield's going to crack. It's going to fog. It's going to do this. It does none of those things, really. I mean, if you take
Yeah.
care of it, right, they work great. I think that the reason they work is misunderstood by people, right? And I've seen people have like 2-day red dot shooting courses. That must be the most boring course in the world, because the thing was made to make it easier to shoot, not harder, right? So it's super simple. When I get people on the range who are new to red dots, or even people who have been shooting red dots but I can see are using it incorrectly, the first thing I tell them is don't make it a 3-dot sight. In other words, when you shoot this, red dot uh, equipped weapon, don't center the dot in the windshield and don't focus on the dot. Don't do focal transition, because all you've got to do is be aware of where the dot is on your target. So effectively what it does is it relieves the shooter of having to align. If you can see the dot, it's aligned, right? It may not be aligned where you want it to come up, but it's aligned if you see the dot. So what I normally do, Rich, is I take people and I have them do what I call a window walk. I'll have them take the dot, put it in the lower left-hand corner, but of the aperture of the structure of the sight. But I'll have them put the dot on the center mass, and I'll have them shoot around. Then I'll have them do, and of course, it comes up center mass. Then I'll have them put it in the upper left-hand corner, but I'll have them put the dot on the target center mass, and I have them walk the window all the way around, maintaining focus on the target and just being aware of the dot. Dude, even people who have shot the red dot sight for years it's like they have an epiphany. They're like, holy shit, because they've been using it improperly. They've been using it incorrectly. It's the next best thing to cheating, as everyone in the world now knows. I knew it a long time ago, but I guess everyone else knows it now.
Well, Kelly, it almost goes back to, and all this stuff ties together. It goes back to the idea of simple gross motor movements and combatives.
Yes.
What you're doing is you're simplifying that aiming process, because rather than having to focus on sight alignment and shifting your focus, as you mentioned, you can just put the dot on the target and press the trigger. And what that does is that alleviates a lot of that brain power, so that you can now be focused on things that you should, like, what is my opponent doing? Where is cover? Is there what's my backdrop look like? You're freeing up some of that brain power. Exactly. So that all that can happen. Awesome stuff, man. One of the last things I want to talk about, Kelly, is you have a list of principles and combatives principles. And at the top of that list is go armed. And people who don't understand, or they're not gun folks, they may be like, go armed? What do you mean? You're training all this, empty hand stuff, and now your number one combative principle is go armed. So talk about a little bit why that's important and why that's at the top of the list of the very key principles that you teach.
If you want to take a chance fighting, then find a local promoter, get a camp, and go fight in a cage or the ring, right? Being out on the street's not about that. It's not about chance. It's about, I want everything to support me walking away. That's what I want, right? So going armed is just, why would I fight unarmed when I don't have to? That doesn't make any sense at all right? Honestly, I'm only going to fight unarmed until I can get to my weapon, right? At the end of the day, if it's at that level, I'm going to fight so I can get to whatever weapon that I'm carrying, okay? But the big thing about going armed, I think, importantly, and what we teach all the groups that we are involved in teaching, is to understand that what's more important is if you're in a situation where you think about your gun, or if you're wearing it on your hip, touch it with your elbow, or you hem your shirt to make sure it's there, or you thumb your knife in your pocket, or you adjust your aspeton under your shirt in your groin line. Why are you still there, man? It acts as a trigger. Your weapon actually triggers you to walk away, because reasonable men don't have to think about having their weapon on, right? It's only when you think that you may have to use it that people check it, they touch it, right? Or they'll make sure that they've got it. Why are you still there? You should be
Yeah.
walking away. And if you can't walk away, then obviously it's at that level. Maybe it needs to come out at that point. But at the end of the day, that's the first purpose of a weapon, is to get you out of the situation. And I'll throw this out there about pepper gas. A lot of people impugn pepper gas. I've gassed a lot of people. You have as a cop, you know. I haven't had that many failures, if any, right? I didn't miss. I put the gas where it was supposed to go. But what it
I wish
did,
my partners were as accurate as you are, Kelly, with it, because I've worn a lot of pepper spray that came from a fellow officer. Yeah.
because they're amped and adrenalized, right? And they're not used to working with it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it does diminish somebody. And that's all that weapon is supposed to do. It wasn't designed to stop them cold in their tracks or anything like that. It was to diminish them. So now he has diminished vision, he has diminished breathing, and topically, his face feels like it's on fire. That's all good for me. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that there's too many people that listen to bad stories about, well, I used pepper gas and it didn't do fucking anything. We probably missed, bro. I mean, or it was
Yeah.
old, it was 10 years old, and you hadn't stirred the contents in a million years. You know,
Yep.
there's a million reasons it will fail, but the person bearing the weapon shouldn't be the reason it fails.
And if you're trained in combatives, you recognize that once you spray this dude, if that fails and he's in close quarters, now you have a bludgeon. You know what I mean? You could use the canister to strike. And it's just that layered approach that you're real big on. One of the things I should mention too, Kelly, because it's sort of a strange situation where we talk about, we want simple stuff and we want things to be gross motor based. We want to simplify everything as much as possible. That doesn't mean shit is easy. So in other words, like when someone first gets a concealed carry license, you know, or maybe they're in an area they don't need it, like Arizona, where I'm at now. But the bottom line is, having a gun and being able to hit the target is the easy part. The hard part is everything else that's involved. And even drawing a gun from concealment under duress is not the same as drawing a gun at the range. The devil's in the details a lot of times, as they say. And even though your approach is simple, gross motor, let's simplify everything as much as we can, you still spend a ton of time. For instance, at one of the courses I took from you, we spent time cutting our cover garments around the hem line, and on our gun side, inserting weed whacker wire through there to give that just a little bit of rigidity. I wonder how many people who carry a gun every day concealed have ever even considered doing something like that. That's going to, in their moment of truth, potentially give them the slightest advantage. Hey, buddy.
Check this out. Here's Bob.
Bob, what's up?
Bob.
What's up, Bob?
He's my tough
You
guy.
need a little camera time?
Yeah,
awesome.
He just checked out. How many people do you think? How many people do you know do it? I mean, at the end of the day, everyone talks a big game about, like, you know, especially in the shooting sports, you know, about their time and all that stuff. And I'll open a video and there he is with an open holster. It's not even covered. So it's like, okay, that's not impressive, right? I mean, you didn't have to deal with a garment. You didn't have to do anything like that, you know. Knowing about garters that hold your shirts down. If you're in a protective detail, right? Gartering the shirt tail from high to low to your sock, so that it won't blouse when you're getting in and out of a vehicle. The shirt won't blouse over the gun and potentially cause a foul. Putting just enough weight in the garment, not too much, so that it wraps your hand, and of course adding rigidity. You know, people don't do it, Rich. They don't have the attention to detail, right? So yes, you're right. I do focus on gross motor movement, simplicity, explosiveness, plyometrics, and all that stuff. But if you're going to go fast, you can't have a shitty car, right? So like all your cover garment, your holster, the way that you wear your gear, your belt, all of that matters. And let's talk about this for a second. How about felony carry? All right, abdomen carry. That always was an alternative method of carry for me, right? So like in the unit back in the days, we always had that option, trained that option, but it was alternative, right? The better alternative being a paddle Kydex holster, harder to conceal, but quick on, quick off. You wouldn't have to undress yourself to get rid of the shit you had if you were in that spot, if you know what I mean. But at the end of the day, it takes two hands to do an abdomen carry. Your left hand has to lift it up to your chin. Your right hand has to secure the 3-finger grip. Hands come together, press it out. Which means that if you're beating the shit out of me, I've got no defense. Now, some people will say, well, I hooked my thumb. Do you really? Under duress? Under life-threatening duress in a situation where you might be killed, you hook your thumb on the hem of your shirt and don't foul the gun.
That's not a fine motor skill at all. Yeah.
Come on. Yeah, exactly. Right. So again, critical thought has to go into this. And I would be willing to bet that there's a lot of people out there that understand the logic in having a hip-borne weapon so that you can use your offside hand to fend, block, do whatever you've got to do. But at the end of the day, still carry abdomen carry because it's in vogue, because everybody doesn't. Yeah. Now, and again, I'll go a step further. If you're carrying abdomen carry and you're using like the string holster that you know that I make and all that, great. It's low profile, boom, it goes on, no sweat. But if you're carrying one of these huge Kydex holsters and magazine carrier in your abdomen, you just lost the plot, bro. I mean, that's just not what it was for, right? And you're not going to tell me that you're sitting in a car comfortably and that the gun's not pointing, hitting you in the pubic bone. You're not going to tell me that it's comfortable, right? I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of bullshit out there, and I think that the thing that degrades honest, solid, sincere tactics is hobbyism. People who are hobbyists like to play. They cosplay, and they come up with all kinds of wacky shit. Ask yourself why a civilian has a ballistic helmet.
Yeah, or
with
nods.
With a nod attachment.
Yeah. Well,
I don't get that. So we can go down that road too. But at the end of the day, you're right. Gross motor skills, simplicity, that's the hallmark of what works.
Yeah. Kelly, I know there's a ton of people, I don't want to put you on the spot with this, but a ton of people are like chomping at the bit, hoping that one day you will release your Paladin stuff in some format. Is that something that you may do in the future? Or,
dude, you know me, I'm like the original Luddite, right? I mean, like, how long did it take us to get this thing wired up, right? I'm not a digital guy. I'm never going to be a digital guy. I'm too old to give a shit. But I suppose that if I could find somebody that would make it easy, because I have all the masters, right? Who would make it easy to digitize this stuff and then put it on a streaming platform or something like that, I'd certainly do it. Just among the other things we've got going and the volume of work, we just really haven't had time to focus on it, but it's not going to be me that figures it out. I guarantee you that.
Kelly, these days, and I know you're busy and probably not even doing much, if any, private citizen weekend type courses. Where can people go if they want to learn more about your approach to combatives and shooting and stuff like that? Are you doing any like corporate safety seminars or anything these days, or is this contract pretty much taking up all your time?
No, it's taken a lot of time, but we're still doing the big corporate ones for really some of the largest companies in the country. I'm prevented by NDA to say who it is, but huge companies. And you can also go to our YouTube site, right? Combatives YouTube site has a lot of combative stuff up, combat sports stuff up, pistol stuff, etc. And I'm not going to rule out doing civilian stuff, Rich. We sold the gym, right? We closed the gym, moved our fighters to other gyms that we know will take care of them and get them good fights and stuff. We're selling off all the equipment. So we don't have a venue anymore like we used to. But where we're at now, I'm looking for ranges where I can hold classes and also maybe some space to do unarmed stuff. It just won't be as frequent as it used to be.
Yeah, fair. And we kind of glossed over that, but with your MMA gym, you have trained some fighters who have had a ton of success, and I know that you really love that, and I loved it because I love watching the guys on TV and stuff. The awesome stuff, but I think it's a great move for you with this contract. I'm very, very happy for you, and I'm happy for the guys you're training because they're going to get top notch training. Which obviously, I don't know anyone that's taken your course who said that sucked. Well, they might say getting hit in the face sucked, but not the material. So, for instance, real quick digression in the combatives instructor course that you did, virtually everybody there was, I think there was 20, 21 of us candidates, like 4 or 5 day long course, very, very intense. And that's coming from me, who's been a martial artist and a cop and a defensive tactics. I mean, I've no shortage of training from different people, right? But it was sort of next level. And there was no freebies, man. You paid for the course, but paying for the course didn't mean that you're going to be an instructor. And I think it was about half the class got the instructor certification nod, and then a few others, maybe like assistant instructor, and they could continue to work up to it. And other people, they just didn't cut it for whatever reason. But you said to those people, like, hey, you can still come back and train for free. You still try to support them in any way you can. And even those folks who paid, these days you go to instructor course, you expect to pay and you expect to leave with an instructor certification. It's like, yes. I pay. What do you mean? I paid. What do you mean I didn't? Well, guess what? It's not. And that made that more meaningful, I think. And even those guys who didn't get the nod, they left way better and they enjoyed the experience. So that's just part of keeping it real and the no BS approach. So it's kind of all encompassing.
Absolutely, man. I mean, as you remember too, our approach, you didn't come there to learn the curriculum, right?
Yes.
You came there knowing the curriculum already and ready to demonstrate that you knew that and that you knew how to teach it. We would teach you how to teach it. And that goes to, having to do a Muay Thai fight. And now we have them do not only a full rules Muay Thai fight, but also a full rules MMA fight in front of their peers. They have to, Everyone has to do that. And, there's some people that don't want to do it. There's some people that aren't good at it. There's some people that get exposed because they've been prancing around in a fucking gym somewhere, not fighting. And then when they have to fight, they look like ass. At the end of the day, it is keeping it real. That's it.
And then it's a decision. It's a decision for that person to say, well, this was an anomaly. The guy got a lucky punch, or if they justify that, or if they say, you know what, there's some holes in my game that I need to shore up. And so there's two types of people, and one does one does the other. So,
well, the other thing too, and you and I have talked about this before, the other thing that making instructors fight in front of other instructors does is you have a solid team. Like, in other words, if someone from outside said, hey, I know so-and-so, and I guess they're an instructor under you. I don't know. Everybody can say about combatives instructors, bullshit, man. I've seen him fight. I've seen what that guy's capable of. I've seen the chin he has. I've seen him come out of bad spots. I've seen him go from ground to standing and the opposite. So bullshit. You don't know what you're talking about. That's the other benefit of making a tight team, is that it's not an anecdote, right? You watch the people that are going to be your brother instructors fight.
And another thing that was very unique, I've never had another instructor course I was a cop for 26 years, took a ton of tactical training and everything else, and as well as the private sector. I've never been in an instructor level course where a big portion of whether you pass that course or not is dependent on how your peers evaluate you. Those are the guys that are slugging it out with you. They know your strengths and weaknesses and everything else, and hopefully they understand their strengths and weaknesses. And it's a self-assessment. It's an instructor assessment, but I think perhaps more importantly, it's a peer assessment. And that's what really made that very viable.
So I took a lot of, as you know this, but for that process, for our ICP process, I took a lot from different ANS kind of things that special mission units do and all that stuff from their selection processes and stuff like that, because I'm knowledgeable about it. And they don't lie. You can't hide it, right? You can't hide. I think in a lot of instructor courses, it's gentleman rules and people can kind of hide and all that stuff. In our process, you can't hide. There's no way to do it, right? I mean, everyone's going to know from the personality profile that we have you do all the way through the training type, the background investigation. I think we're the only group that does background investigations, but at the end of the day, you can't hide from it. And we've had some people take exception to that and run away and hide in dark corners and shit like that, but that's okay. They don't fit, and if you don't fit, you don't fit. You can't be a bullshitter. You have to be able to do what you say you can do on demand. That's why we do cold shot testing. You remember in the shooting instructors course, right? I never test anybody warm. We always test cold, because that's what you're going to have on the day of the incident. So walk out on the range at 8 o'clock in the morning when the frost is still getting off the leaves, put your coffee down, step up to the line. Let's see what you got, without warming up, and a lot of people refuse to do that. And it's like, you're lying to yourself,
Yeah. If you have a sub 1 second draw on your fourth attempt, you don't have a sub 1 second draw.
100%.
Yeah.
Or if you're sub 1 second after shooting 500 rounds today and we test you at 1630, I'm not thinking you got a sub 1 second shot.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, thank you so much, brother. It was good to see you, even though this is just kind of virtually. Hope to get together with you in person soon. Guinness is on me for a change, and
awesome.
Really appreciate you here, brother. And thanks for everything that you've done, not just for me, but for an entire generation of instructors. I say this all the time. You are sort of a victim of your own success, in the sense that a lot of what you did sort of became industry standard, and people are teaching things that you initially taught, but they don't even know that you're the person to attribute that to, because they learn from someone who learned from someone who learned from someone. But that's a good thing, because you're making people safe.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it. And thank you to Aimpoint as well.
Well, guys, that's a wrap for this episode with Kelly McCann. If this episode resonated with you, be sure and let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Aimpoint's Taking Aim podcast. We'll see you next time.